Here to present the Charlie O'Reilly Memorial Award Trial Lawyer of the Year, please welcome Consumer Attorneys Association of Los Angeles 2016 President-elect Ricardo Echeverria.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is obviously an incredible special evening for our law firm and in particular for me. First, I get to see my mentoree, Danica Doherty, awarded the Rising Star Award. Danica, I'm so proud of you, and it is so well deserved. And then I have the honor of presenting my mentor, Mike Bedard, as the Trial Lawyer of the Year. Mike really is a pillar in our legal community, and David Ring was touching upon it, and he's respected so much by not just the plaintiff's bar, but the defense bar and the judiciary. I've never seen a lawyer get more referrals from defense counsel or judges than Mike Bedard, and it's a tribute to the type of lawyer and person that he is. And I think the reason why he commands so much respect is because no matter how much success Mike Bedard has had, he is always humble about it. You will never, ever hear Mike Bedard brag about anything he has ever accomplished. It's not in his DNA. And I think that began with his childhood. He was born and raised on a dairy farm in Chino with his older brother Ben, who's here tonight. And they were raised with love and hard work, and he learned the work ethic, and he also learned humility. Mike started practicing when he was barely 24 years old. He got through school in 6 years, undergrad and law school. And he partnered up with Jimmy Gutierrez, who I saw earlier. He's here tonight. And they hung up their shingles, and they were smart enough to realize that they needed to have a specialty. They couldn't be a general. They had to have a specialty. And they thought long and hard, and they decided they were going to specialize in anything that walked in the door. They had 3 cases worth $10,000, and all the other ones were small cases. But seriously, they did, and Jimmy says to me, he goes, you know, actually, it wasn't that bad, Ricardo. We got a lot of cases between Bedard and I. Bedard had the Basque community, I had the Mexican community, and between the two of us, we had the Dutch and the Portuguese. We got a lot of cases. It's just that none of them were any good. But Mike and Jimmy grew that practice, and it did flourish. And they had that practice for 12 years. And that's when I think Mike Bedard will tell you the best thing that ever happened to his career happened. And he forged a partnership with Bill Chernoff. And Mike and Bill have had that partnership, just had their 30th anniversary as law partners. The loyalty, respect, friendship, trust that those two have for each other is an example of what a law partnership should be. Mike's career has been highlighted by his work in insurance bad faith, and in particular in the field of HMOs. The work he has done has changed thousands, and I mean thousands of lives. For example, he was responsible for the largest single verdict against an HMO in the country, $120 million, Goodrich versus Aetna. That verdict created such national buzz, it shook the core of the entire industry. But to give you an idea of the tenacity that Mike has, when the HMO industry was not paying for high-dose chemotherapy for breast cancer patients, Mike took on that fight, and through case after case after case, he got the entire industry to stop denying that treatment. And it was shortly after Mike argued a case called State Farm versus Superior Court Allegro, which Mike argued and created the law that unfair business practices 17200 applies to the insurance industry. So Mike created this law, then he applies the law, and he sues the entire HMO industry with one cause of action because they were denying proton beam treatment for the treatment of prostate cancer. And he tells the entire industry, if you want out of this case, you don't have to pay a nickel. You just got to change your policy and pay for the treatment. No attorney's fees, no nothing, just change your policy. And slowly but surely, HMO after HMO after HMO signs up, and that treatment got approved because of the efforts of Mike Bedard. And in handling Northridge earthquake cases, Mike discovered unfair business practices where the insurance companies were getting draft reports from structural engineers, draft reports so they can tinker with the language to minimize payments. As a result of his efforts, thousands, and I mean thousands of claims were reopened, readjusted so people could be paid fairly. But despite all these accomplishments, I think what Mike would be most proud of is his work in preserving the 7th Amendment constitutional right to a jury trial. Mike is personally credited 7 published opinions upholding the 7th Amendment constitutional right to a jury trial and defeating arbitration clauses. I don't need to tell all of you, I know most of every one of you here, you know that Mike Bedard is my mentor, and he's taught me pretty much everything I know about being a trial lawyer. When I was a baby lawyer, he taught me lessons about jury selection, and he was telling me how important it was that you use a questionnaire in trial. You get far more valuable information about jurors that way. So I was a baby lawyer helping Mike try a case downtown, and he was using a questionnaire. One of the questions on that questionnaire was, do you think jury awards are A, too high, B, about right, or C, too low? And I'm helping Mike go through the questionnaires, and just about everyone fills it out that jury awards are too high. But there was one that filled it out that jury awards were too low. And not only that, it was circled, there were exclamation points on it, and this person was emphatic. So we go back into trial, and Mike's picking the jury, and this juror gets on the panel. So Mike asked the juror, sir, I saw that you filled out the form that you thought jury awards are too low. Yes, I did. Well, from the way you filled it out, it seems like you feel pretty strongly about it. Mr. Bedard, I feel very strongly about it. Okay, well, can you tell us why you so strongly believe that jury awards are too low? And the juror says, I was telling the bailiff $15 a day for the work we do as jurors is just not enough money. Really insightful information, Mr. Bedard. That was a true story. As has been mentioned, the case that Mike has won this award for is the work that he did in the case of Anna Rahm versus Kaiser. In 2008, Anna Rahm was a normal 16-year-old kid growing up in a family of love in Chatsworth. She started having back pain, and at first they didn't think much of it. She went to the chiropractor, and it didn't go away. It kept getting worse, to the point that the chiropractor told Anna and her mother, Lynette, you know, maybe you should go to your Kaiser doctor and request an MRI. And so they did. And the Kaiser doctors denied that request, saying, no, you need to continue to treat conservatively. And over the next 3 months, Anna and her mother, Lynette, repeatedly begged for an MRI. It took 5 requests over 3 months until they finally approved the MRI. The results of that MRI revealed the worst. Anna had a massive, raging osteosarcoma tumor in her pelvis. That tumor was the size of a softball, and it ultimately resulted in a hemipelvectomy, over 20 hours of surgery where they removed Anna's right leg, her right pelvis, and part of her spine. It was a very difficult case against Kaiser from the standpoint of causation, because Kaiser's main defense was, hey, even if we should have ordered the MRI earlier, the same outcome would have been applicable. You still would have had the same surgery. Mike went out to meet Anna and the family, and within about, I think, 5 minutes of talking to her, signed up the case. I remember that day like it was yesterday. I didn't go out to the meeting, but Mike came back to the office, rang my phone, and he says to me, I just met Anna Rom. She's probably the most deserving plaintiff we will ever represent. She's got an incredibly difficult case against Kaiser from the standpoint of causation, but we're gonna do the case. And his quote, I can see him saying it. Sometimes, Ricardo, there's cases in your career that you just have to do. And so we did. The first obstacle was getting over Kaiser arbitration. There was an arbitration clause. December 8, 2010, there's a tentative ruling against Mike granting a petition to compel arbitration. Had that tentative stood, we would not be here tonight. And you should read the transcript, the lawyers in the room, because it's one of the most eloquent, passionate, vigorous arguments I've ever read. So much so that the judge, from the bench, reversed his tentative and denied the petition to compel arbitration, and Anna's constitutional right to a jury trial was upheld. The case went forward for a couple of years, and it was heavily, heavily litigated. And it reached summary judgment, and summary judgment was granted. The court found that the case could not proceed as a matter of law, as a bad faith case. The case was done at that point, nothing left. And to say Mike was dejected would be an understatement. But he didn't stop. He went back into court, requested leave from the court to amend the complaint to add, after 2 years, a medical malpractice cause of action. Over a lot of opposition, that was granted. And the case proceeded for another 2 years, overcoming summary judgment. And the case went to trial. And against a zero offer, Mike obtained a $28 million verdict on behalf of Anna Rom. In all, Mike's quest to achieve justice for Anna there was surviving a petition to compel arbitration, 2 motions for summary judgments, 2 writs to the Court of Appeal, 3 petitions to the California Supreme Court, and there was a favorable published opinion that came out of it. In many ways, the story of Anna Rom, and she's here tonight, by the way. I encourage all of you to meet Anna Rom. In many ways, the story of Anna Rom and of Mike Bidart championing her cause to achieve justice is exactly what this award is all about. So folks, please join me in honoring our 2015 Charlie B. O'Reilly Trial Lawyer of the Year, Michael Bidart.